All righty, let me just make sure it's awake, everybody, then we'll begin. Let's see here. Let me clear out some stuff. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let me just make sure we're good, and then we will officially begin. All right, YouTube is up. Rockfin is up. We're cooking. All right. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. If you're in my time zone and you're live, you know how it goes. To everyone listening to the podcast later, how are you? Leave a 5-star review, would you? Please leave a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the headline show. Got a lot to talk about today. This is some of the news going on this week that's important to me, and it includes child labor coming back. Not kidding. It includes a victory for Starbucks workers, which we're going to start there. We're going to start with the good news. Also going to be touching on the Gigi Sohn hearing that happened this week, and also the train derailments. Now, there is another one that just happened outside of Detroit. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit about New Palestine, Ohio as well. East Palestine. I did it again. Oh, man. I said New Palestine. So I did that on Status Coup. I said New Palestine. And all I can say, folks, is, 12 years of Catholic school. That's all I got for you. 12 years of a Catholic school education. And that's what happens. Occasionally you just say something biblical. You don't mean to, but it just happens. So let's get into the news. Here, we're going to start with the good news. I know that's not typical for me, but starting with the good news, check this out. Judge bans Starbucks from firing union supporters. This is from the New York Times. So, first of all, quick precursor here. What has been going on with Starbucks? Well, Howard Schultz recently took over again as CEO of Starbucks. He had stepped down and someone else was the CEO. But then this little thing was happening that they didn't like. What was that little thing? Workers were unionizing. They didn't like it. So they were like, this is not good. So Howard Schultz said, well, I was so popular when I ran for president and everybody loves me, so I should probably come back as CEO. I'll be able to handle this PR problem, quote unquote, that we're having. So he came back and he's like, okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try to impose benefits for people who aren't union, but not give them to workers who are unionizing. And the labor board said, hey, Howie, that's illegal. You can't do that. You're trying to intimidate union workers. Also, you're insulting the intelligence of all of your workers because you're trying to imply that you just did this out of the goodness of your heart. Hey, I wanted to do all these nice things for you for you workers, but since some of you are trying to unionize, I guess they don't want these nice things that I was totally planning on doing anyway, and it had nothing to do with you unionizing. So Howard Schultz was told he couldn't do that. So then he started doing another thing. He started firing workers who were trying to unionize, which the labor board stepped in and said, also, hey, you can't do that, Howard. You can't do that. So Howard Schultz is just breaking a bunch of labor rules left and right in an attempt to intimidate his employees from unionizing. It's not working. Starbucks stores are unionizing by the day. We've all lost count at this point, which is a good problem to have. Here on this show, we used to cover every time a store unionized. We can't do that anymore because stores are unionizing constantly. There is a tracker that you can follow on Twitter. I believe it's just Starbucks Union or something like that, where they will give you all the stores that are unionizing. So this is from the New York Times. Judge bans Starbucks from firing union supporters. Win. A nationwide injunction restrains the company from dismissing labor organizers. And here's the big part, could help reinstate ousted workers more quickly. Because we all knew this was against the law and it wasn't going to hold up in court. You can't fire people for trying to unionize. You have to make up some nonsense. I mean, a lot of times you can fire them anyway. You can just make up nonsense. But it's going to face some scrutiny, and reasonably so. I mean, deservedly so, obviously. But here's the big part. This could also help reinstate ousted workers more quickly because they're going to be like, hey, you fired them under BS pretenses. You got to give them their job back. A federal judge in Michigan issued an injunction on Friday banning Starbucks from firing U.S. workers because they seek to form a union or engage in other collective activities. The move is the first nationwide judicial mandate related to the labor campaign that has led to the unionization of more than 275. Again, folks, less than a year ago, we were covering every time a Starbucks store tried to unionize because it was like here and there. There was a store here, there was a store there. Oh, this is big news. Now it's more than 275 Starbucks stores, and that's just a little more than a year. Now, Starbucks, of course, is going to appeal this decision. So the union Starbucks Organizing Store Workers United has accused the company of firing more than 200 workers because of their involvement in the campaign. It is illegal for a company in the United States to fire workers for so-called protected concerted activities such as seeking to unionize. So folks are happy that this is happening, obviously. Now, let's see. The company noted in its statement that, all right, so here's a particular, for instance, where a worker was fired. And let's see here. This worker is Miss Whitman. Hannah Winbag. All right. Just trying to get this. The judge ordered Miss Winbag reinstated. So they're already ordering people be reinstated. So they're saying Starbucks said it fired Miss Whitbeck because she left the store early during a shift, effectively forcing a coworker to manage the store alone for roughly 20 or 30 minutes. That violated a company rule. Miss Whitbeck didn't dispute the facts of the case, but contended that the violation would not have led to a firing absent her involvement in the union campaign, which included wearing a pro-union button. So basically, she's like, yeah, I made a mistake here, but I wouldn't have been fired if it wasn't for my pro-union efforts. I would have faced some other lesser disciplinary action. The labor board found merit in her charge and issued a complaint, and an administrative judge ruled in her favor in October. Starbucks has appealed the decision to the full labor board in Washington. The company noted in its statement that it had offered and that Ms. Whitbeck accepted temporary reinstatement before the federal judge's order. So they're trying to get out of this PR-wise. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to basically avoid the PR nightmare. So that's what's happening here. So this is a win for Starbucks workers. Shout out to them. They got a victory. Hopefully this continues. Hopefully workers who were fired unjustly get reinstated and they get to unionize and they get living wages. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. They're unionizing because they don't get fair benefits. They don't get treated well. They don't get living wages. This is a problem all across the United States because we live in a corporatocracy where the corporations get to do whatever they want and they pretty much monopolize our job industry and they exploit people. And that's what happens every time capitalism is tried. All right, let's move on to the train derailment, the new one, the newest one. There's another one in Detroit. So for those of you who have not been following, over on Status Coup, you guys know that I co-host a show for Status Coup on Thursdays. We have been covering very extensively, and when I say we, I just mean the entire network. There's other reporters who are actually on the ground. I'm not on the ground in Ohio. I live in Los Angeles, a long ways away. But people are on the ground, and they're covering what's really going on in East Palestine, Ohio. And it's East Palestine, not New Palestine. And I think it might be, they might actually say Palestine. I'm not sure. But yeah, East is the important part there, not new. Ron, 12 years of Catholic school and biblical stuff sometimes slips in. But anyway, there has been a new train derailment in Detroit, but let's staying on East Palestine for a bit. So what happened there was they said, hey, this train derailment was bad. There were some hazardous chemicals. We did a controlled burn of the hazardous chemicals. It's killing fish. It's killing livestock. It's making your pet sick, but it should be fine for humans. Well, guess what? A bunch of humans were getting sick. People were getting rashes. They were getting sore throats. They were getting headaches. They were getting sick. These chemicals could seep into the water tables, which could contaminate drinking water. These chemicals are linked to causing cancer, and they're in the air right now, and the plume is traveling. But they said, hey, it's fine. In fact, you can go back to your homes. So they had an evacuation order. They reversed that evacuation order. People were wondering why they did that. Later, we found out why they did that. When we were interviewing people over on Status Quo, we found out why they did that. Here's why they did that, folks. They did that because by calling off the evacuation order, the company is not liable to reimburse citizens for any expenses. So originally, when there was an evacuation order, the company, Norfolk Southern, they had to reimburse people who had to leave their homes and get a hotel and stuff like that. Well, when you call off the evacuation order, they don't have to do that. So the company, as far as citizens are concerned, doesn't have to do squat right now. And they're trying to quote unquote make it right. If you believe that, okay. And you can find footage of the mayor going, we don't know what to frickin' do. And it's because you have a government who is bought off by these lobbyists, who is doing PR for them. And you have a media who is bought off by these industries, who is basically doing PR for them. So where do you have to go to find out what's going on? You have to go to independent outlets like Status Quo, people who are actually talking to the people in these communities who are sick. And I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to check out Status Quo's coverage on all that. The show that Tina Desiree Berg and myself did on Thursday was very eye-opening. We interviewed a mother whose 9-year-old son is very ill. We interviewed 2 residents who live nearby. So that's where you got to go to get the actual story of what's going on, because the powers that be aren't actually talking to these people and getting the story. So that's what's going on in East Palestine. East Palestine. So here's another thing going on out in Detroit. This is from The Hill. Train carrying hazardous materials derails outside Detroit. Local authorities reported that a train carrying hazardous materials derailed in a town outside Detroit Thursday morning. Authorities in Van Buren Township, Michigan, warned residents to avoid the area near the derailment. Now, it's saying that there's no evidence that hazardous materials were exposed since no rail cars carrying such materials were compromised. So there were hazardous materials on this train. They're saying that they don't think that any of the cars carrying the hazardous materials were compromised. In other words, they toppled over, basically. So that's what they're saying. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy said in a statement Thursday there is no threat to the public regarding the derailment. Now, here's the thing, folks. Hopefully that is the case, and that remains the case. Will it be such? We don't know. That's the thing. I mean, let's keep in mind, let's go back to East Palestine for a second, or East Palestine. I'm not sure. Do any of you guys in the chat know how to say it? Is it Palestine or Palestine? Let me see. I'm curious. If any of you guys know, please let me know. just stop me if I say new. You know the drill. Keep in mind that happened around, I believe, February 3rd. And it took weeks to figure out really what was really going on. I mean, over at Status Quo even. Now, keep in mind, that's an independent outlet that has a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the resources CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News does. And we could not send reporters out there right away. Status Lou was going to go on the beat right away. It was too dangerous for him. He had to wait. It's still dangerous, but he's there now anyway. So shout out to Status Lou, and we're going to see even more stuff on the beat from him in the coming weeks. But my point is it took a while to figure out what was really going on, because you have the people there who are trying to figure out what the hell's going on. They're trying to get information. They can't get information from anywhere. Even the mayor himself is pleading for information and help. And it takes a while for this stuff to set in. It takes a little bit for people to show symptoms and stuff like that. I think it happened relatively quickly because these were really dangerous chemicals. But as far as figuring out, okay, where's the plume going? Did it get into waterways? And it already has gotten into nearby creeks. You can find those videos online of this hazardous water. You see this like chemical rainbow in the water. It's disturbing. You can see those videos. So if this is the truth out in Michigan, well, I guess that's a bit of a relief that at least the hazardous chemicals weren't compromised. But do we really know for sure at this point in time? I would argue no. I would argue we're not going to know for sure for a little bit yet. And this could be a lot worse than they're letting on. Why? Because that's exactly what happened in East Palestine. That's exactly what happened. It was way more serious than they were letting on. And why do they say that? Because it lets the company off the hook. Oh, and in this case, by the way, it's the same company. It's Norfolk Southern in both cases. So it's the same company. They are robber barons. And keep in mind, this is fresh off the hills of the Biden administration crushing a rail strike. One of the reasons the rail strike was going to happen was because rail workers are overworked and they're understaffed. You have about one person manning an entire train operation, and that person is on call 80 hours a week, and they are working to the bone. So not only is that train grossly understaffed anyway, but it's understaffed on top of a person who is grossly overworked. Imagine working 80 hours a week and you're running a train by yourself. That's a recipe for disaster. No reasonable person would ever allow a situation like that to happen. But here's the problem. Norfolk Southern is not a reasonable entity. It's a completely immoral corporation who is only focused on the bottom line, and they want to give more money to shareholders, so they screw over the workers left and right. And they don't care, and they're going to poison your society in the meantime too. And by the way, this is a huge bipartisan effort. Because, yeah, the Biden administration crushed a rail strike. But we can roll it back a little further, no pun intended. The Trump administration gutted a bunch of protections around the rail industry. You can roll it back a little further. The Bush administration passed horrible environmental policies that allows this stuff to happen too in the first place with no regard for anything. They passed some of the most disastrous environmental policies that this nation has ever seen, the Bush administration. And then guess who kept that on frickin' autopilot? Barack Obama. And then Barack Obama set the stage for the performative nonsense you can do, like when he showed up in Flint and drank the water. They're doing similar stunts now in East Palestine. Oh, it's fine. Look at us. Here, we're gonna touch our lips with some of the water. It's fine. So this is a bipartisan effort, folks. And all the administrations going back to George W. Bush and probably far beyond that. But I'll just go as far back as GW. All of them have played a role in this. All of them. So whenever you see liberals on Twitter going, well, that's ridiculous. And whenever you see people on the right going, well, it's just the Democrat, that's ridiculous. It's both sides of the Wall Street coin, folks. It's Wall Street Team R and it's Wall Street Team D. And anyone trying to tell you otherwise is just being a partisan hack. Oh, and by the way, Pete Buttigieg is freaking terrible at his job. Anyone trying to pretend like this isn't also on Pete Buttigieg is, again, being a complete and utter partisan freaking hack. So we'll keep an eye on Detroit, but I would say let's not take their word for it quite yet, because there might be more than we realize. And how are we going to find out if there's more than what we realize? Well, it's going to take outlets like Status Quo who go there on the beat. A quick follow-up I want to do. Gigi Sohn. We're going to go over to the digital rights space for a little bit. Gigi Sohn. Who is Gigi Sohn? I'd imagine regular watchers of this show.
Hi, everyone. Mark Barden here.
Gigi Sohn is.
Promise.
Here, let me stop this ad. Sorry about that. You guys know who Gigi Sohn is.
On December 14th, 2012.
Oh, there it goes again. Okay. All right. That's
my 7-year-old son Daniel was shot to death.
That is not frustrating at all. Okay. So Gigi Sohn is Biden's nominee to the FCC. Gigi Sohn is a pro-net neutrality, would be a pro-net neutrality FCC commissioner. Biden promised a pro-net neutrality FCC. He didn't want to make that promise. He had to because of the Bernie Biden task force. He appointed Gigi Sohn about 2 years ago now, nearly 2 years. And her confirmation has been stalled because of Biden's indifference, because of many conflicts of interest of big tech in the Senate, in particular with Chuck Schumer, and because of a big right-wing smear campaign that both Republicans and Democrats, more Republicans, but both Republicans and Democrats are participating in. So, again, speaking of bipartisan efforts, there's been a bipartisan effort to drag their feet on Gigi Sohn. Most FCC appointments take a couple weeks. This one is taking about 2 years and counting. Why? Well, because it would give us a pro-net neutrality FCC. The FCC head, Jessica Rosenworcel, is pro-net neutrality, which net neutrality just assures a free and open internet and makes sure that the internet flows like flowing water. If we lose net neutrality completely, which we've lost it at the federal level, but we still have it in some states. If we lose it completely, the internet's going to look like cable television 2.0. And that's not a potential. That's exactly what will happen. Shows like this won't exist anymore. Independent shows, they won't exist anymore because they won't load for you. You won't be able to watch them. You'll only be able to watch stuff like CNN, Fox News, and stuff like that. And other websites won't load for you anymore either. So basically, the internet will just be cable, corporate news, and Amazon. That's it. That's literally what could happen in a post-net neutrality world. People make it out like that could never happen. It freaking could. People thought that what happened to radio post-1996 could never happen. They never thought there would be this homogenized, like this mass homogenization of radio stations, because radio stations are supposed to be local. They never thought something like that could happen. And then guess what? It freaking did. They never thought that television would be completely homogenized and gutted. Guess what? They freaking did. If you think they can't do it to the internet too, you're just being naive. And I know that net neutrality is not the world's sexiest topic. I talk about it anyway because I care about it. But if net neutrality is ever a sexy topic, it'll be because it's too late, and it'll be because we freaking lost net neutrality. And another shout out to everyone who tuned in. This is the thing that I did with Status Coup. Let me go ahead and skip the ads in this case. So over on Status Coup, I live streamed the entire hearing. I do recommend checking out that video. And somebody actually, I'll scroll down here. Somebody timestamped my wrap up. Now, normally I would feel a little bad when someone does this, right? Like normally I'd be like, oh, that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. They don't want people to watch the whole program. But in this case, I actually really appreciate the person who did that. Doug, thank you for doing that, Doug. Because in this case, the hearing is over 2 hours long, and it is painful to watch because Ted Cruz just gives a huge plethora of nonsense. One of the things they're trying to pin on Gigi Sohn is they tried to pin this lawsuit that she was a part of, because guess what her job is? She's a lawyer. She was part of this lawsuit involving copyright. She reached a settlement. Again, she's just doing her job here. But because it involved copyright, they're saying that she could potentially be compromised. Now, she has already agreed that if there were ever such a thing that dealt with such an issue, she would recuse herself if it was necessary. Here's what's interesting. Tom Wheeler, Obama's appointee to head of the FCC, cable lobbyist. How is that not a compromise? Ajit Pai, Trump's appointee to the FCC, who gutted net neutrality. He was a cable lobbyist. How is that not a compromise? Guess what, folks? It is a compromise. Here's the difference, though. They weren't necessarily pro net neutrality. Tom Wheeler was kind of, like wishy-washy on the issue. He had to reinstate net neutrality because of public demand, or basically he got it officially on the books. If you're not familiar with the history and anatomy of net neutrality, there's a playlist on it on my YouTube channel. Please check out that playlist. There's a net neutrality playlist right on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ron Placone, for anyone who's watching this on a different platform right now. And you can really do a deep dive into the history and anatomy of net neutrality. I can't like recite the whole history right now. You know what I mean? Because if I did, it would take forever. But if you're like, man, I kind of want to learn more about this issue, check out my playlist. It really does a deep dive. But anyway, so they tried to pin this on Gigi Sohn. So they're putting her up to this ridiculous scrutiny that they don't put any of the other nominees up to. Because again, an appointee to the FCC, a nominee to the FCC, it usually takes a couple weeks. It takes a handful of weeks. This has taken nearly 2 years. So please check out the stream if you would. It was another nonsense hearing. This is her third one, by the way. This is her third hearing. But at least we're seeing some movement here. At least there was a hearing. She is still the nominee. That's a good sign. I am pleading with all of you. Please go to battleforthenet.com and sign this petition. This demands to stop the homophobic attacks on Gigi Sohn and also to confirm her immediately. Please, it takes less than 30 seconds to sign. Please sign this petition. We can get net neutrality back. We can get Gigi Sohn confirmed. but we need all hands on deck to force everybody in the political realm to keep their promise, including Joe Biden himself. We need everybody. If everybody does what they promised, she will be confirmed. But they're not going to do what they promised unless we pressure them to do so. Because otherwise, they'll just listen to the cable lobbyists on Capitol Hill because they don't want net neutrality. But if they got the cable lobbyists in one ear and they got a bunch of people really loud in that other ear, and they're thinking, all right, look, we like giving you guys what you want because you pad our pockets, but sometimes we got to give the people something because otherwise we'll lose our jobs. Sorry. That's how we win in politics. That's how you win in politics when you live in an oligarchy. You have to force elected officials to pass policy they'd rather not pass. That's just, it really is that simple. At least at the federal level. Local level, it's a little different, and you can get better wins locally, which is kind of why I cover the stuff I do. But when it comes to policy, where there needs to be federal involvement, the way you win is either via ballot initiatives or via forcing officials to support policy they'd rather not support because they're worried they'll lose their job otherwise. End of story. Battleforthenet.com. Thank you very much. All right. So let's go to child labor. This is freaking nuts. So I've been covering, I once said on this show and elsewhere, and I do still believe this to be true, unfortunately, that we will see child labor come back before we see living wages. That has, unfortunately, been correct, which really sucks. I want to be wrong on that. In fact, I'll mention this as a quick aside before we get into this. I want to start a new series, preferably on Status Quo. I've been talking to Jordan about it, but I want to start a new series called I Hope I'm Wrong, where it's basically just me talking about the issues that I think are important, but under the frame of, look, I hope I'm wrong about this. And the reason I thought it'd be a fun idea for a segment is like there's a certain irony in the fact that most people on YouTube and platforms, like they really are obsessed with being right. I would argue, especially in the YouTube space, especially in the YouTube space, especially. All right, file that under unnecessary words, especially in the YouTube space, especially. Quote me on that. Ron Placode, especially in the YouTube space, especially. But in the YouTube space in particular, I think most people, a lot of people, I guess I shouldn't say most. I don't know if I can give that qualifier or not, especially since I don't really watch anything. But in the exposure that I've had due to not having a choice, i.e. it pertains to my, my own content output, I feel like a lot of people are more concerned with being right than they are with any type of change. What I mean by that is to really get status quo shifting change, you need to try. And when you try, guess what? You're probably going to lose a lot. You're not going to win every time. You're going to try different things. Some of them are going to fail. Some of them are going to evolve into something you no longer want to be a part of. Some of them are going to become corrupt. Some of them are going to just dissipate into nothing. But if you don't try, well, then there's no chance at winning anything. And also, it's a lot easier if all you want to be is a personality online. It's a lot easier to not try because then you never have to admit fault. And then you look a lot better if all you're going after is clicks and downloads. You look a lot better that way because you can be like, oh, well, I told you this was going to be wrong. I told you that was going to be wrong. I told you that this was going to be wrong. Look, it's really easy to bet against the left because we've been losing for nearly 100 years in this country. We've been losing for pretty much 100 years. So it's really easy to be like, oh, yeah, well, this won't work. Surely you guys didn't listen to me. Well, you don't have any recommendations. You're just like shitting on everything else. So how did I get off on that tangent? Oh, yeah. So that's why I think it'd be ironic if there was a segment where it's like, I hope I'm wrong. Where everyone's just like, I really want to be right. And then you have a segment where it's like, no, I hope I'm wrong, actually. This is what I'm worried will happen. I hope I end up being wrong. And one of the things I hope I'm wrong on is I hope that we don't see, I hope we see living wages before we see a full-fledged return of child labor. Now, we covered the story out in Pittsburgh, my hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there was a McDonald's. There was a cluster of McDonald's owned by the same owner, and they had over 101 child labor violations at that McDonald's. We covered, there was another car plant that had child labor violations. Here's another, for instance. This is from More Perfect Union. At least 102 children as young as 13 were found working overnight shifts using hazardous chemicals. Gee, with all these train derailments, how can that go wrong? Letting children use hazardous chemicals they might not be ready to handle, and cleaning brisket saws at 13 plants in 8 states. The U.S. Department of Labor has fined Packer Sanitation Services $1.5 million. So Packer Sanitation Services is the company in violation here. They have been fined $1.5 million, which I think is less than a slap on the wrist. This is next to nothing. The Food Sanitation Company, this is from the Twitter thread from More Perfect Union. The Food Sanitation Company was employing children in the plants of well-known companies such as Tyson Food, who by the way, is a notorious, terrible company, Tyson Food, Cargill, Turkey Valley Farms, and more. This is not the first time the Labor Department has intervened over Packer Sanitation using child labor. Last year, they were caught employing 31 children, and some of the kids suffered chemical burns from the corrosive cleaners they were required to use. 102 children. And, you know, when I cover these things and people say, oh, well, that was just one instance. Look, both of the things we covered as of recent that I covered here on Get Your News On with Ron, over 100 children were involved. So when it's that big, it's that many children. That's a significant amount of children who are working at that age. That's not an outlier. That's the sign of a more disturbing trend. And what I mean by that is I guarantee these aren't the only 2 violations in the United States going on. If it was like one child or something like that, okay, that'd be different. Then the company should still be held liable, but this probably isn't a systemic problem. This is not a systemic problem if it's that low. You know what I mean? But because there's over 100 children involved in each case, this is a sign of a more systemic disease. And that is a genuine rise of child labor in the United States. And I think we are going back to what's remnant of an incredibly disturbing time in this country. And I'm talking literally a new version of the robber baron days, where kids weren't really going to school. And you might think, Ron, that sounds extreme. There's a bill right now being proposed by, I believe, Thomas Massie to completely end education in the United States. And when I tweeted about it, there were replies supporting that idea. Our education system has problems, absolutely. So now people are supporting just gutting it entirely. And then if you can't afford a private school or a charter school, guess what? Your kid's not going to school. Your kid's not going to school. And honestly, I think we're heading closer to that direction than we are in the direction of actually properly funding education and treating teachers well. I think we're closer to what I just described as far as kids not even being able to go to school than we are towards, a better system for teachers and students alike and proper funding. So it's not an impossibility. And I guarantee the 100 kids in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at McDonald's and the 102 workers at various plants in 8 states with Packer Sanitation, they're not the only children facing this in the country. It's a systemic disease. And it's on the rise. And it is disturbing beyond comprehension. Melissa makes a good point. Wait, is this 1923? I thought it was 2023. Guess I'm wrong. Yep. Welcome to the new Gilded Age, says I'm me. Yeah. I mean, it's disturbing. Schultze, always being right is fun, though. You have to put a lot of work into that, though. LOL. Funny, but I disagree, actually. I know you're kind of being sarcastic, but I do in the literal sense. I actually disagree with that. I actually think it's way easier. My friend said this to me. My friend, a good friend of mine from high school, who I talked to about a lot of issues. He's a scientist. He's one of the most brilliant people I know. And he said, it's really easy to just kind of fall in some kind of lane and just never deviate from that and just kind of have your echo chamber. That's really easy. What's hard is waking up every day, every single freaking day, and saying, can I be wrong? Am I potentially wrong? And looking into certain things and being like, could I be wrong? That's hard. That's hard to do. And that's really hard to do if you want to create content in this space, because that's when you evolve with new information, which is something human beings should do, that's somehow seen as weakness. Because we live in an age of sound clips and sound bites. So if you kind of evolve on something because new information presented itself, you're somehow seen as a phony or a fraud or a flip flopper or this or that, instead of just being a human who evolved with new information. Now, what makes me different than a lot of folks in this space is that this isn't my only fucking thing. This isn't like, I do Get Your News On with Ron because some of y'all like it and people tune in for this show. And if that ever stops, guess what? Get Your News On with Ron will stop. And I got plenty of other stuff I'm working on. Get Your News On with Ron. That's why I only do it once a week. I can't do it more than that. You know, Get Your News On with Ron is once a week because I got other things. I go on tour. I do a bunch of writing projects. I'm producing more stuff, which, by the way, please, for everyone watching this live, please don't go anywhere when the mainstream ends, because we're going to do the post chat / patron stream. And I have a couple big announcements. So please, please, please do not go anywhere. Please stick around because I have some big announcements. But first, let me get to a super chat here. Where did it go? Where did that super chat go? That is really frustrating. All right, let me try to. Christina, why can't I find Christina's? Why is Christina's chat not able for me to highlight here? Christina, let me get your super chat. You were kind to give me one. There we go. All right. Sorry that took a while. Christina, what's up, Christina Suozo? Great show as always. Thank you very much for that, Christina. Grazie mille. I think your last name's Italian. I apologize if it actually isn't. Oh, and Jenna, thank you. Okay, Steen. Sorry about that. Thank you, Jenna. I'm sorry I didn't. I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. Holly, also, I'm sorry, guys. I missed that. I missed that. All right, East Palestine. East Palestine. Say it 10 times, Ron, and don't say New Palestine, for crying out loud. I'll do my best, folks. I will do my best. I promise. So, yeah. I really hope I'm wrong about this child labor thing, folks. But when you see all these instances of hundreds of kids being involved in child labor violations, and you see a rise of people trying to eliminate schools, yeah, it's freaking concerning. And guess what? As far as like medieval peasants and stuff like that goes, guess who gets less vacation time than they do? The average freaking American. The average freaking American gets less vacation time than they do. Just so you know. Just so you know. So, folks, before we go on to the post-stream, tour dates, I got them. Get your tickets now, by the way. April 14th, the second show in Los Angeles. The first one was a blast. And by the way, in the second show, I think I might do a screening of Loner. We'll see. But April 14th, Los Angeles. I'm still working on that Loner part. May 12th, Los Angeles. Third show, 3 of 3, which I'm getting ready for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Notice how I said getting ready for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I got in, folks. I'll announce that right now. Those shows were anticipation of hopefully getting into the Edinburgh Fringe Festival this year. I got in. I will be part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland. So UK, keep an eye out. My shows run from August 16th to the 27th. My show is called Balding is Punk Rock. I stumbled over it. My show is called Balding is Punk Rock. It's based on a joke I have. It's a goofy, but I'm real excited for the hour. If those of you who are in the UK, please come out. My show's free, by the way. I'm doing the free fest. So attending my show is free. I know that getting to Edinburgh might not be easy. The festival itself is not a super cheap endeavor, but the show's free. So if you can go to Edinburgh, please, I can't wait to see you there. Anyone in the States who has thought, man, I've always wanted to go to the biggest arts festival in the world, make your plans now. Come to my show. August 16th through 27th is when I'll be there. That's when my show runs. My venue is 32 Below. My show time is 4 p.m. in the daytime, 4 p.m. in the daytime, or 1600 for those of you who do the proper time. But 4 p.m. for all of us United States people. But it's at 4 p.m., which is a really good time slot. I'm excited about my time slot because in that festival, they get some really big household names, and those are the names who go on at prime time. Also, people like to hit the bars and party in the evening too. So you don't want to be too late into the evening, or it's going to be really tough for you to get audience at your show because they're either going to see like the big arena level names or they're out hitting the parties at that point. But you also don't want to be too early in the day because, man, people are freaking tired. And a lot of times early in the day is when like the children's shows go on and stuff like that. So like you want to be like right in that kind of middle spot. So I'm excited I got a nice 4 o'clock spot. It's like right in between. You're not quite hitting the happy hours yet. You're still going to shows. I'm happy. All right. So I'll be doing the Edinburgh Fringe this year, and I can't freaking wait. June, before Edinburgh. Edinburgh's in August. Before then, June 16th, Madison, Wisconsin. June 17th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. June 29th, Chicago, Illinois. Still trying to lock in a few Midwest dates. We'll see, folks. I'm still trying to lock in some cities. I'm working on it. If you want to see me out near you and you're in that vicinity, let me know right now because I'm trying to get everything completely finished in that regard soon. But Indianapolis, trying to figure something out. But it's been hard finding the right venue in Indy. So let me know. And if you're in that area, Columbus, Cleveland, whatever, if you're in that area and you want to see me, let me know now. RonPlagone.com to let me know. But in the meantime, Madison, Minneapolis, Chicago, get your tickets now. Use the promo code Lucy at checkout for discounted tickets. That's an early bird special. It's not going on forever. So get your tickets now. Don't wait. RonPlagone.com, promo code Lucy for those Midwest shows. And, it saves you a little money on tickets. And also, speaking of savings, the other rule I'm having this year is if you are on strike, if you are a striking worker, or if you are part of a union effort, you get to come to my show for free. Just email me, give me the information, and we'll make it happen. And you get to come to my show as a guest. So, that's a way I can support, I know it's not, if you don't really enjoy my comedy, it's not much, but if you do, hey, that's kind of cool. There you go. So RonPlagone.com for all tickets. And if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/RonPlagone for a give what you can level. You get all kinds of exclusive perks. You get to see my pilot loner, which I'm going to be deciding what to do about that soon. You get to watch my performance as Lucian the Satirist. That's not going to be available to the public anytime soon. And you get all the Patreon and Rockfin Premium streams. And you get to see full stand-up shows not available anywhere else. And that's all for a give what you can level. Boom. Yeah. All right. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For everyone catching this live, don't go anywhere because I'm going to do the post-stream chat right after this. It's going to be a casual chat. And also, I have some announcements to make. And they're actually pretty big announcements. So don't go anywhere. The stream goes out to everyone. It's just the replay is only available on Patreon. For those of you listening to the podcast later, if you want to hear all the cool announcements, become a patron right now. Patreon.com/RonPlagone. You can become a patron. $1 a month is all it takes. And you get all the post games, the post chats, if you will. Guys, I will be right back. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, and a general strike.